Some unfortunate news coming in. Noted author Khushwant Singh has passed away at the age of 99. Khushwant Singh, if you remember, was born on the 2nd of February 1915. He is a celebrated, or rather was a celebrated Indian novelist and journalist, and an Indo-Anglican novelist as well. Singh is best known for his trenchant secularism. Well, there are a lot of awards also that Khushwant Singh had won. Let's just tell you more about his journey, his 99 years that we should in fact be celebrating. Khushwant's career started as a journalist when he was a briefless lawyer in Lahore in the year 1940 and wrote regularly for the Tribune, contributing book reviews and profiles under the byline KS. Well, we will get you more details on that. We have Sanket Upadhyay now joining us on the phone line. Sanket, do we know how Khushwant Singh passed away? He is a legend in his own right.
Absolutely, and a very noted author as well as a noted journalist that India has lost in Khushwant Singh. The latest information that we are getting is that around 12:55 this afternoon is when the death actually happened in a hospital. He was quite ill. He was ailing with a lot of illness at this moment, and he was born in the year 1915. He was 99 years of age. Noted journalist and author Khushwant Singh has passed away in the national capital. That's the latest that we are hearing at this moment. Of course, you were telling us about the person Khushwant Singh was, the celebrity Khushwant Singh actually was. He was an Indo-Anglian novelist. Singh was best known for his humor and also his love for poetry. His comparisons of social and behavioral characteristics of, in fact, Westerners and Indians are, in fact, something that he has been identified with for a very, very long time. He is a noted author, a noted journalist. He died at around 12:55.
Yes, and let's just tell our viewers more about Khushwant Singh and his journey. Well, he started off in the year 1940 as a briefless lawyer, and then he went on to write regularly for the Tribune, contributing book reviews and profiles under the byline KS. Also, what we know is that his first regular column, Sanket, appeared in Yojana, launched by the government to publicize its 5-year plans. This man is identified with primarily, Sanket, for his wit.
Absolutely, Vedika. He was known for his wit. He was also known for the various books that he has in fact written, also for his short story collections, for the plays that he has written. He has got a number of honors and awards. In fact, the books go on from The Mark of Vishnu and other stories in the 1950s to the history of Sikhs in 1953, and also the very famous, something that we have all read as children, Train to Pakistan, which was released in 1956. Among the later books that he had in fact written towards the turn of the century in the year 2000 onwards have in fact been, the latest in fact has been in 2013, The Good, the Bad and the Ridiculous, which was co-authored by Hamra Qureshi. He has written a lot of books which have actually got him a lot of critical acclaim as well. A History of Sikhs, which was revisited in the year 2005, the illustrated history of the Sikhs, and Why I Supported the Emergency is something that was also a very, very celebrated book. Now, Khushwant Singh is one of the best known Indian writers of all time. He was born in 1915 in Hadali, which is now in Pakistan. He was educated at the Government College at Lahore and the King's College in the Cambridge University and the Inner Temple in London. He practiced law at the Lahore High Court for several years before joining the Indian Ministry of External Affairs in 1947.
Yes.
He began his distinguished career as a journalist with the All India Radio in 1951.
All right, Sanket, do stay with us. Well, let's also just tell our viewers that the indomitable spirit of Khushwant Singh was manifested through a book that he wrote. In fact, it was last year itself when he had just about turned 98. That was called Khushwant Nama, The Lessons of My Life. And that was presented, the first copy, in fact, on Manmohan Singh's wife, Gulsharan Kaur. This book, in fact, spoke about and enlightened people about the life of Khushwant Singh. Well, he was 99 when he passed away. And like Sanket was telling us, there were a lot of awards that he also won. Very unfortunate news now coming in of Khushwant Singh passing away. Well, he is survived by his wife and 2 children. One is Rahul Singh and the daughter is Mala. Also, let's just tell you the honors and awards that Khushwant Singh has won in the past. Well, he did get the Rockefeller Grant in the year 1966, the Padma Bhushan which was conferred to him by the government of India. What's noteworthy here is he returned the decoration in the year 1984 in protest against the Union government siege of the Golden Temple, which took place in Amritsar. He also got a lot of other awards, the Punjab Ratan Award by the government of Punjab in the year 2006, Honest Man of the Year by Sulabh International in the year 2000. What he also got was the Padma Vibhushan by the government of India in the year 2007. That was followed by the Sahitya Academy Fellowship Award by the Sahitya Academy of India in the year 2010. And then he also was conferred the All India Minorities Forum Annual Fellowship Award by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav in the year 2012. Also, let's just take you through a few of the books written by the man who has passed away, the noted journalist Khushwant Singh. The Mark of Vishnu and Other Stories in 1950, The History of Sikhs in the year 1953, Train to Pakistan in 1956, The Voice of God and Other Stories, also I Shall Not Hear the Nightingale in the year 1959, The Sikhs Today in the year 1959, The Fall of the Kingdom of the Punjab in 1962, A History of the Sikhs, followed by Ranjit Singh, the Maharaja of the Punjab. He also wrote Gadar 1915, India's First Armed Revolution. That was written in the year 1966. A History of Sikhs, 1966, was the second edition of the same book. A Bride for the Sahib and Other Stories in the year 1967. Black Jasmine, Tragedy of Punjab. Delhi, a novel. Sex, Scotch and Scholarship, Selected Writings in the year 1992. Not a Nice Man to Know, the best of Khushwant Singh in the year 1993. We Indians in the same year, followed 2 years later by the book Women and Men in My Life. A lot of other books also, but the last few, let's just take you through them. The Sunset Club in the year 2010, Agnostic Khushwant Singh, There Is No God in the year 2012, The Good, the Bad and the Ridiculous in the year 2013. Alright, he'd also written a lot of short story collections, The Mark of Vishnu and Other Stories, and that was also published earlier. We also have Sanket joining us once again on the phone line. Sanket, just take us through the journey called Khushwant Singh.
Well, I'm sure, Vedika, you must also have read this story in the NCRT textbook, The Mark of Vishnu and Other Stories. Obviously, everybody in this country has fond memories of Khushwant Singh. At some time, somewhere or the other, Khushwant Singh was a name that, resonated in every household. As children, whether in cities or in villages, everybody somewhere had read what Khushwant Singh had, is to offer. He was born in 1915 and passed away in the year 2014. At 12:55 today, we have lost one of the biggest writers, the biggest contributors this country has ever given to the world of literature. Now, Khushwant Singh, as you have in fact been mentioning, is one of the best-known Indian writers of all times. He was born in 1915 in Hadali, which is now in Pakistan. Of course, he's also known for a very, very celebrated work in Train to Pakistan, which was written in 1956, which has been converted into movies, into short plays, The Voice of God and Other Stories, I Shall Not Hear the Nightingale, again a very, very celebrated work of Khushwant Singh. The Sikhs Today and the various books that he wrote on the Sikhs, A History of the Sikhs in 1963, The Sikhs Today in 1959. He also wrote on Ranjit Singh, the Maharaja of Punjab in 1963, A History of the Sikhs, second edition, 1966. So it's a huge list of contribution that Khushwant Singh has actually given to this country. Of course, there were various short story collections also, including The Mark of Vishnu, as we have in fact been talking about. A Bride for the Sahib and Other Stories, which was published in 1967, and of course the latest one that you in fact also mentioned in 2013, a book that he co-authored with Hamra Qureshi, The Good, the Bad and the Ridiculous. Just before that, in 2012, we also had Agnostic Khushwant Singh, There Is No God. That is the book that he wrote in 2012. So this is a long list. Of course, apart from that, in 1990, another celebrated book that Khushwant Singh actually wrote was Delhi, a novel, and followed by another book in 1992 of Selected Writings, Sex, Scotch and Scholarship.
Yes.
This is in fact, in just a short moment from now, we are actually also going to play you a short interview that we had done with the noted author Khushwant Singh. This was about 2 or 3 years back. We'll try to queue up that tape so that our viewers can actually take a look at what personality Khushwant Singh actually was.
Sanket, what's also interesting is in one of his last interviews that I've just seen, a print interview, Khushwant Singh had gone on to say that I may die any time now, And he also went on to say that, well, he's going to miss the money, but really what he's going to be missed for is his humor, his sense of wisecracks really, and also the fact that he was very serious about the political situation in the country, because of which he even returned the Padma Bhushan back to the government of India.
Absolutely. In fact, in the 80s and the 90s, Khushwant Singh is, notoriously known, in fact, among the Sikhs for having poked fun at the Sikh community himself. Now, he was a key member of the Sikh community. He has written several books on the Sikh community, but he was also known to, enjoy the jokes that came, in the way of the Sikhs during the 80s and the 90s. So, he was not really appreciated also in the community for that, but that actually reflected his open-mindedness.
Sanket, do stay with me.
Yeah.
I'm Mr. S.K. Dua, senior journalist, also joining me on the phone. And Mr. Dua, how would you remember Khushwant Singh? 99 years, a life to be celebrated?
It's a great life, and I wish he could complete the century, but
Yes.
he fell short, and that was not in his control. But I would remember his contribution to humor in writing and otherwise in personal life also. He used to say humor is no laughing matter in India, but he himself contributed lots of jokes, and in crucial situations he came out with a joke and made the atmosphere very light, always. And people started looking forward to his contribution to the message that in democracy, humor is also important.
And Mr. Dua,
Now,
what's also very interesting is he didn't spare himself also when it came to his wit.
Pardon me? Hello? Hello?
All right, Mr. Dua, do stay with me. We have Mr. Rahul Singh, Khushwant Singh's son, also with us. Mr. Singh, this is a very trying moment for you, and we also extend our condolences over the demise of your father. But how would you tell our viewers, how should we remember your father at this point?
Well, remember him as a great writer, as a great communicator, somebody who lived almost 100 years old and who saw, India from before independence till after independence, and who was close to a lot of prime ministers and presidents. But as somebody who was not only somebody, who was close to all these big people, but also who was a great communicator with simple people also. He could talk to a villager, he could talk to a president and a prime minister. He was a great communicator and said things as he felt. He was not a great diplomat. So he's somebody who spoke from his heart. He said things which people did not like, but he spoke from his heart. And I think above all, he was trusted by people. People trusted him. They felt that what he said was something that they could trust. I think in that way, I think he was one of the great communicators of our time.
Yes, Mr. Singh, even if you could tell us about the last few days before your father passed away.
Well, he was getting weaker, but mentally he was all there. Last couple of days he had some breathing problems and wheezing, but mentally he was right there, right till the end, and he used to have visitors. And believe it or not, last evening he had his single peg of Scotch whiskey. So he passed away with his mental facilities all absolutely intact.
Yes.
And I think that's how he always said he wanted to go.
Well, 99, just short of a century there, Mr. Singh. But do tell us about this long journey that your father has traversed on.
Yeah, it's a long journey. He studied in England. He became a lawyer. He practiced law in Lahore before independence, but he got disillusioned with law. He became a diplomat. He joined the diplomatic service. He was posted in Canada and in England. He was Krishna Menon's press attaché, but then he got disillusioned with the diplomatic service, and he was with All India Radio. He worked for UNESCO. He had a variety of careers, and then he came into his own, I think, when he became the editor of the Illustrated Weekly in, I think it was 1969. I think he became the editor of the Illustrated Weekly, and
yes, that was in 1969, sir.
And then after that, he He also wrote a history of the Sikhs, which I think a 2-volume history of the Sikhs, which he feels will be what will be always remembered after him. He wrote an outstanding novel also, Train to Pakistan. So that he had a very full life, a very full career, yes. What else can I say?
Well, I know it's a trying time for you, but I'll just take a few more minutes with you, sir. There was a time when he did voice his disgruntlement against the political establishment. I'm talking about the anti-Sikh riots. Could you tell our viewers more about that?
Yeah, he was. Can you hold on one moment? Yeah?
Yes, sure.
Yeah. So he was very upset with Operation Blue Star, the army going into the Golden Temple, and as you know, he returned his Padma Bhushan because of that army action. But then he later on got the Padma Vibhushan, but he was very upset with the army action and of course during the anti-Sikh riots also. Can I say, because I've got some other TV people here also.
Yes, Mr. Singh, one last question before I let you go, which is that could you just give us a few details of the last rites that were to be performed?
The last what?
The last rites, sir.
The last rite. He's going to be cremated at the Lodhi Crematorium at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
All right, Mr. Singh, thank you so much for sparing time for us. We know it's an extremely upsetting moment for you right now. We'll try and contact you later, but that's what we have as of now. Khushwant Singh's son speaking to Headlines Today, taking us through the journey, the 99-year-long journey of Khushwant Singh, who passed away at the age of 99.